You're listening to the weekly Parsha podcast, recorded with Hashem's never-ending assistance in Ramapit Shemesh Israel 5776 2016. This week's Parsha is Parsha's Pekudei. The Parsha begins, chapter 38, verse 21. Eile Pekudei HaMishkan, Mishkan HaEdus. These are the countings of the Tabernacle, the Mishkan HaEdus, the Tabernacle of Testimony, the Tent of Testimony. We'll see what this means soon. Asher Pukad Al-Pi Moshe, Avodas HaLevim, that was counted by Moses, the work of the Levites, Biad Yisamar ben Aaron HaKohen, in the hands of Yisamar, the son of Aaron, the priest. So, this, as Rashi explains, this Parsha is going to speak about all of the money, all of the coins that were collected, how it was spent. There's an accounting, there's an extensive accounting of what went on, how the money, how the kesef, all of the silver and the gold, how it was used. So there's accounting, there's an enumeration. And the verse speaks about accounting of the tabernacle, and it speaks about the tabernacle as a tent of testimony. What is this concept of Mishkan HaEdus? Rashi tells us, Mishkan HaEdus, Edus L'Yisrael. It is a testimony to the people of Israel, Shevita Lam HaKadosh Baruch Hu Al Maisa HaEgel, that Hashem forgave them for the sin of the golden calf. Because we see that God placed His divine presence amongst the Jewish people, but despite the fact that indeed they had sinned, despite the fact that they had severed their relationship from God, God came back into a relationship with the Jewish people, and He placed the divine presence upon the Mishkan. The Mishkan was the conduit through which the Jewish people would again come into a relationship with God. So there's a testimony. The Mishkan itself, the tabernacle itself, testifies to the fact that the Jewish people still have a relationship with God, that God has forgiven them. It's very interesting. I'd like to understand why the Torah speaks about this verse. Why does it speak about the counting of the Mishkan, counting of all of the different parts and the pieces and the money and how it was spent, etc.? And then immediately afterwards it describes the tent, the Mishkan, the tabernacle, as a place of testimony. What is the connection between the concept of counting and the concept of testimony? Now I'd like to share with you a beautiful medrash, which when we read it, there's a lot of different aspects of this medrash, but we'll see that all of the different aspects of the medrash can be formed and joined into one if we listen carefully. I'm using my words carefully. If we listen carefully, we'll be able to see that the disparate elements that seem to be here are actually part of a great whole. The medrash says like this, Davar Acher, Eile Pekudei HaMishkan. These are the countings of the tabernacle. Mahu Eile. The Torah uses the word Eile here. We had a discussion last week, I believe it was, about the word Eile, this or these. Re'umi Vara Eile, the stars, Elu Shemos Bnei Israel, these are the names of the people of Israel, etc. Now, there's a new discussion we're going to have about the word Eile. It's very, very interesting. It says like this, Mahu Eile. Why does it say these are the countings of the tabernacle? And as the Eitz Yosef explains, generally, whenever you have the word these, it's saying these as opposed to others. It's coming to say that there's something here, something in this, in these, as opposed to something else. So why is it saying these are the countings of the Mishkan, the enumeration of the different aspects of the tabernacle? So the Medrash gives us some background. It says to us like this. The time when the Jewish people received the Torah, there was an amazing thing that happened. The Jewish people went back to the state of Adam Harishon, of the first man before the sin. Just like the first man, there was no death for the first man and for his wife. The Jewish people at Mount Sinai, they also were in a state of deathlessness, where the Malach HaMaves, the angel of death, would have no power over them. Shneimar, as the verse says, Charus ala luchos. The verse refers to the fact that the Ten Commandments were inscribed onto the tablets. Mahu Charus. Our sages tell us, what is the word Charus, which means inscribed? What's the deeper depth of what's going on here? Rabbi Yehuda Omer. Rabbi Yehuda says, Cherus min Golius. Rabbi Nechemia Omer, Cherus min Malach HaMaves. The two sages tell us two things that seem to be disparate, but we'll actually see that they really represent the same idea. Rabbi Yehuda says that the word chorus, which means inscribed, can also be read as cherus, which means freedom. And there was a freedom. According to Rabbi Yehuda, the freedom was that there wouldn't be any golus, there wouldn't be any exile. The Jewish people, if they had not sinned with the Maisa Egel, with the golden calf, they would never have been sent into exile. They would have remained in the land of Israel forever. Rabbi Nehemiah says that what was the freedom? The freedom was from Malach HaMavis. The freedom was from the angel of death. If they had not sinned with the Maisa Egel, with the golden calf, they would never have died. How was that? And I'm skipping a few lines in the Medrash, but the Medrash continues and says, "Shekeven shekilu atari halbisham HaKadosh Baruch Hu miziv hadari." As a result of the fact that the Jewish people received the Torah, they accepted upon themselves. They said, "Na'aseh v'nishma." They said, "We will do and we will listen," which we also need to understand. What is the concept here of Na'aseh v'nishma? We will do and we will listen. Was the idea of listening? But since they said that, so Hashem enclosed them with the shine of His splendor. What does that mean? What is the shine of God's splendor? He gave them a certain level of godliness, which was either that they would never go into exile, some of that represents godliness, or that they would never be able to die. That's clear, that's godly. God lives forever, as it were. Uma haya levush. What was this clothing that they received? Rabbi Yochanan says, Ataris Hilbishon, that they received crowns. Notice it's not one crown, it's crowns, it's plural. And elsewhere the Medrash says that they received one crown for the word Naaseh, for the word that they said we will do, and they received another crown for the word Nishma, that we will listen. So they received two crowns. You need to understand the concept of the crown, you need to understand why they received two crowns. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai says an amazing thing. Klei zayin nasan lahem. Hashem gave them weapons. Hashem hagadol chokugolav. The name of Hashem was written upon this weapon. As long as they had this in their hands, the angel of death could not control them. He couldn't rule over them. If the Malach HaMavis, the angel of death, would try to come, they had their powerful weapons that they would use against him, which had God's name in it. Meaning, they were above the Malach HaMavis. They were more powerful than the angel of death. Minayna talamid, how do you know this? Mimasha kasav sham. From that which it says, after the Jews sinned, it says, V'atahored edyecha me'alecha. And now, take off edyecha, your edyecha, which the Meforshim explain over there in the verse, it's referring to the crowns, these very crowns. Take it down. You don't have it anymore. You don't have that power. You don't have that protection anymore. Remove the crowns. You have lost your weaponry that protects you from the Malach HaMavis, from the angel of death. Now it's very interesting when we read this verse, it refers to this powerful spiritual protections as edyecha. The root of the word edyecha is aid, which means a witness. Why is it that it refers to these crowns or to the weapons that protect them from the Malach HaMavis as a witness? What is the concept of a witness? Also, it's connected clearly to the fact that we refer to the Mishkan as a Mishkan Ha'edus, as the tabernacle of testimony. What is the idea of testimony? How does it connect into the fact that the Jewish people said, Na'aseh v'nishma, they received the Torah, they said we will do and we will hear, and as a result of that, they received these witnesses, these crowns, or this weapon which would protect them from the Malach HaMavis, from the angel of death. Now the Medrash continues, and I'm going to skip a few lines, but the Medrash continues and tells us that at the Maisa Egel, there's something very interesting. There was something which paralleled what happened at the Mishkan, what happened with the collection of gathering together of all of the gold, which Moshe Rabbeinu, which Moses did. A similar thing happened at Maisa Egel. There was a gathering together of gold, and it was in a very similar way. The Medrash tells us that they came to Aaron HaKohen and they said to him, make us an Egel, make us a god that will go in front of us because Moses is not around. So he said to them, okay, bring me the gold. Amar lehem parku nizmei hazov. He said to them, take off all of your golden nose rings. Miyaves parku v'ayokolam noisin le'ad she'amar lehem daichem. They brought it, they were bringing it until Aaron said, okay, that's enough. It's very interesting. And Moses, in his teichacha, in his rebuke of the Jewish people, which is in Deuteronomy at the very beginning, the first verse, it says, V'lavan v'chatzeres v'di zahav. He makes a veiled reference to the gold of the golden calf, and speaks of it as v'di zahav. V'di, that word can also mean enough, because they brought so much gold that Aaron had to say to them, that's enough. Now the Medrash tells us a mashal. Mashal a-bachar shenichnas la-medina. Raha oisam goyven tzedakah v'amar leitein. There was a certain young man who came into a place, and he saw that they were collecting tzedakah, they were collecting money for charity. And so he said, okay, I'll give whatever you want. He kept giving them until they said, okay, that's enough. Halach ma'at. He went a little further on. He saw that they were collecting also for some kind of theater, for something which wasn't really such a worthy cause. And he said there as well to his servants, he said, give them money. And he kept giving until they said it's enough. So you see that it's possible to give and give and give and have that midah of giving, and sometimes it can be used correctly, sometimes it's used incorrectly. Kach Yisrael nasnu zav la'egel. In the same way, the people of Israel, they gave gold to the golden calf, to the point where they were told, that's enough. Aaron said, you brought too much. Amazing thing. In a parallel way, and actually it's going to be an atonement for them. The very fact that they had gone and gave endlessly to the golden calf, they would atone for that by giving endlessly to the Mishkan, to the point where those who were collecting for the tabernacle said, that's enough. Shneimar, as the verse says, all that they brought was enough for all of the work that needed to be done. There was enough and extra. And therefore Hashem said, let the gold of the tabernacle come, and let it atone for the gold of the golden calf. Now listen to this because it's so beautiful. God says to the people of Israel, when you made the golden calf, you caused me to become angry. When you said, these are your God, you spoke about the golden calf and you said, this is your God, O people of Israel. Now that you have made the Mishkan, I'm going to show you that you have atoned for it. You have appeased me with the word Elah, the same word that you made a mistake with, that you did that sin with. It's going to appease me. Have Elah Pekudei HaMishkan. That's why the verse uses the word Elah. It says, these are the countings of the Mishkan. All the countings, all of the gatherings, all of the bringing together of the money that the Jewish people did. All of that was an atonement for all of the gathering that they did to bring together that money for the Maaseh Egel, for the golden calf. And now the Medrash finishes off with a beautiful statement, just so touching. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu Yisrael. Hashem also said to the people of Israel, in this world, meaning in the times of the Mishkan, the times of the Tabernacle, the Jewish people, so many years ago, 3,300 years ago, you appeased me with the word Elah, with the gathering together of all of these parts of the Mishkan, of all the parts of the Tabernacle. In the future, there's going to be a gathering as well, an Elah, another time that I'm going to say these. I'm going to gather together these. Shenemar, as the verse says, Hine Elah merachik yavoyu. Behold, these will come from afar. Hine Elah mitzafain. These will come from the north. Umiyam, and from the west. Ve'elah me'eretz Sinam, and these from the east. Va'omer, and the verse says, Mi Elah ka'ab tu'ufena. Who are these that they are flying like a cloud? V'chayonim el aruboseim, and like the doves into their nest. So that's the end of the Medrash. But as I was thinking about this Medrash, mulling it over, trying to understand what is the theme here, what is the concept here, what is the idea of this gathering, what is the word Elah, what is the word these, Elah Pekudei, what is the concept of the counting, what is the concept of Edus, like we asked before, what is the idea of testimony? So one of the things that occurred to me, that I thought about, is the fact that we have another place, very interesting place, where we have the word aid. We have the word aid, which means testimony or witness. We say Shema Yisrael. We say, hear, O Israel. And again, we have the concept of hearing. Shema Yisrael. Hear, O Israel. Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Hashem our God, Hashem is one. Now, if you look in a Sefer Torah, if you look inside of a Torah scroll, the letter Ayin, the last letter of the word Shema, is large. And the last letter of the word Echad is a Daled, is large. So you have an Ayin and a Daled. Those two letters are large. If you put those two letters together, you get the word aid. When I say Shema Yisrael, when I say, Hear, O Israel, Hashem our God, Hashem is one, I am witnessing, I'm saying testimony over the fact that God is one. When I fulfill the Torah, when I follow the 613 commandments, when I learn Torah, when I try to be spiritual, when I try to bring God into my life and into the world, I'm testifying to the fact that there is a God, that there is a transcendent reality. I am an aid. I'm a witness. Now, what is an aid? What is a witness? And why is it connected to Shema? Why is it connected to hear? You know, when we have witnesses, we don't see anything. We have to put the pieces together. We have to hear them. And not only that, it's very interesting, you can't have one aid. There are certain places where a single witness is indeed believed, but generally speaking, you need to have two witnesses. One is not enough. You need to have two. So you need to take the pieces and put them together, because there's some information that I'm lacking. There's something that I don't see directly, and I need to find out what had happened. So you have an aid, you have a witness who says his opinion. He saw what happened. I don't know what happened. I have two people. I put the pieces together. If their testimony jives, if they're saying a similar thing, they can't say exactly the same thing, because then we can assume that they have made up something together. But assuming that everything makes sense and everything is proper, so we can believe them. We can believe that something happened even though I didn't see it directly. That's what an aid is. That's what a witness is. Someone who helps me see something I don't know directly, helps me put together the pieces, helps me hear. You know, he said that the Mishkan HaEdus, Rashi told us that the idea of the Mishkan of the Tabernacle was that it was a testimony to the fact that the Jewish people, even though they had fallen from that relationship with Hashem, nevertheless, Hashem took them back. There's an edus, a testimony, meaning there was something that we didn't know. We don't know. It looks like they've done a sin. How can they be forgiven? But if you put the pieces together, you follow the story from beginning to end, there's a testimony. The Mishkan itself, if you look at what's going on, it's not absolutely clear. But if you look, you see that it testifies. The fact that Hashem is Mashra Shechini, places His divine presence on the Jewish people, that itself testifies to the fact that there still is a relationship between Hashem and the Jewish people. When we speak about Eile Pekudei, when we speak about all of the countings, when I count something, I'm trying to get a bigger picture. I'm trying to see what has happened. If I don't have an accounting for what's happened, I don't know what's happened necessarily. I might be very vague on it. But when we have a pekuda, when we have an accounting, we go through all of the numbers. We see how much money came in, how much money was spent, how much of this gold went to this creation of this particular item, how much of this silver went into this. There's an accounting. We're putting all of the pieces together. We're gathering together all of the information. That's the Pekudas HaMishkan. That's the counting of the tabernacle. Now, what is the concept of death? What is the idea of the Malach HaMavis? What does he do? What is his power? His power is to separate, to take apart the body from the soul. Really, the body and the soul are supposed to be together, and they're supposed to stay together forever. That's how Hashem created Adam HaRishon, and that's the state that the Jewish people return to when they received the Torah. When they said, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do and we will listen, they meant we're going to put together the pieces. We are going to be the Eidim. We are going to be the ones who testify that there's a God in the world. And so God gave them His clothing, as it were. What does that mean? He gave them from the shine of His splendor. He enclothed them with these crowns. The concept of the crown always is the transcendent aspect. It's that which sits upon the head. It's that which brings together all of the disparate aspects of the human being and shows that here, just like a king includes all of his people and he wears a crown, the concept of the crown is the transcendent aspect. The Jewish people would now be that which testifies to God in the world. And so as long as they were testifying to God in the world, there would not be any separation between the soul and the body. And not only that, but what was the other concept? There wouldn't be any exile. What happens in exile? When there's exile, so the Jewish people leave their proper place. Instead of being all together as one in the country of Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel, so they're disparate. They're all over the world. Mashiach, who's the king, the Messiah, who's the king, who wears the crown, so to speak, he's the one who gathers the Jewish people. That's his job. To gather the Jewish people to Eretz Yisrael, bring together all of the disparate elements of the Jewish people, to bring them out of Gullus, to bring them out of the exile, out of the pieces, to count them all, to bring them all together. When the Torah says, Eile Pekudei, these are the countings. The word Eile means these. The only way I can say these, when I say the word these, it means that it's right in front of me. All the pieces have come together. And so there's a mistake that can be made, of course, also. The Jewish people they did a gathering of the gold for a negative, for a great sin, to create the golden calf. That was a great mistake. But they were able to be machaper for that, to atone for that, by gathering it once again for what they truly are. What they truly are at their essence, that oneness, that's the servants of Hashem, the ones who testify to God's oneness, to God's greatness. And it's also not a coincidence that the word Eile, as the Medrash finishes off, and I'd like to finish off, the word Eile is the word that Hashem uses to remind us that just like then, He saw the Eila, the gathering that we did, and He forgave us, and He brought us back into a relationship with Him, back into oneness with Him. That word Eila is also used in the future as God brings back. These will come back from a distance. These will come from the north. These will come from the east. These will come from the west. And these will come. They'll be gathered together like birds, like doves who are coming back to their nests. The Jewish people will return with the word Eile. Hashem will forgive us for all of the distance that we created between ourselves and God, for the exiles that we created that were a result of our sinning, our distancing ourselves from Hashem, our disconnect from spirituality. Finally, Hashem will gather together, as He has already begun to do, as the Jews have already begun to return, to be gathered back to Eretz Yisrael. So to all of the Jews will return, and it will be with the word Eile. And there will be an edus. There's no greater testimony to the fact that God still has a relationship for 3,300 years, and even more, going back to Abraham, 3,700 years, that God has a relationship with the Jewish people, and that relationship is forever. And there's no greater representation, no greater testimony to the fact that Hashem has a relationship with us when He gathers us back. And He says, Eila, these are coming from the north and the south, from their exile. And when we indeed stand and we have that testimony, we bear witness to the fact that God is one, Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, that God is one, we are that aid. We hear all the pieces, we put all of the pieces together. Just like when I'm listening, when I'm hearing a concept, I have to hear one word after another, until all the words come together. Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. When we stand there and we testify through our actions, through our nasa, through our nishma, through our actions and through our listening to God, when we testify that there is a God, that there is one God, so then we bring all those pieces together and we return to the land of Israel. And just like God testifies about us, we testify about Him. And that's why Eila Pekudei HaMishkan, the verse speaks about the fact that there's a counting of all of the pieces. We have brought all those pieces together. It's Eila, these, and it's a Mishkan HaEdus. It's the tabernacle of testimony. Hashem should bless all of us, that we should all be zoch, we should all merit to be able to hear and to put together all of the pieces and to testify to God's oneness. And we should all merit to see that day when God testifies and says, these are all of the pieces, all of the Jewish people returning from exile. May it be soon. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful Shabbos. This podcast was made possible through the gracious donations of listeners like you. For more podcasts like this, please visit www.arigoldwag.com or search on iTunes Ari Goldwag.